great meeting.
Ladies and gentlemen, this meeting of the agenda, and these are routine items presented for council approval without discussion. Any council member can ask to have something removed from the blanket motion and discussed separately. Regular council meeting minutes for December 5th. Parks and Recreation Commission meeting minutes for June 15th, July 20th, August 17th, September 21, and October 19th. The secretary has been real busy. Items 5C, payment of application number 3 for the 9-mile linear park landscape project to Santoro Service Limited of Chesterfield, Michigan for $14,985.59. D, Planning Commission meeting minutes for November 22nd. Arts and Cultural Diversity Commission meeting minutes for October 13th and November 10th. Finally, licenses, new and renewals submitted for December 19th. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. I don't see any elected officials out here, but we do have the Parks and Recreation Master Plan presentation. Can you introduce yourself and start?
Good evening, council members. Thank you for having me. Is the microphone? Now it is. Thank you. My name is Bob Doyle. I'm a principal with the firm of Smith Group, and we've been working with you folks for almost a year now on updating and preparing a new master plan for the Parks Department and the parks of your community. And this is a very exciting moment because we're getting close to the end of the road of the master plan. But I would say that the master plan is really just setting the stage for change looking ahead. So this is an important milestone on a road and a journey that will take many more years. But we've been honored and very excited to work with your community and have enjoyed the experience immensely. What I'd like to do is give you a brief presentation on the findings of the master plan and where we are today and what's left to be done.
I don't know if this should come before or after, but Victoria Park is north of 696. And at one time, a large investment was put in, and there was like a public place for performances and a place you could go walk and do some exercise and walk and do some more exercise. And a lot was put into it, and it hadn't been maintained over the years. Is it because it was not used? Are we not renovating it the way it was because it's that was in the wrong place and it should be closer to here? Can you explain?
As an element to be programmed with activities at the community center that was there. And so those are, the space that's there was envisioned as a place for markets, performances, events, and over the last, it's a public park, of course, but having the public park next to the Jewish Community Center was a catalyst for the park to be used. And when you lose that catalyst, I think it has been my assumption in discussions we've had that you lose that energy that fits, that makes the park work.
So we're basically moving that kind of amenity closer to here.
Yes.
Where there are more people
Yes.
using it and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
We're relocating that.
Yes. Yeah, so the plan for Shepherd Park has an outdoor performance space, a high level of activity for community gatherings, places to have events, art shows, or whatever you may determine is appropriate to program on this.
Free to chime in, but Victoria
we did not include, because Victoria is going to be torn up as part of the resurfacing of the I-696 overpass, the second
The second time.
time in
Yes.
5 years. So we did not want to include that yet. That will come at a later phase down the road. I also just want to say one more other thing. Rothstein does have play amenities included in the proposal.
Yes.
It's just not what is like currently there. But
Right.
it does have play amenities. There's a hill and some other things, and
Yes.
you're going to talk about all that in your presentation. Okay.
And you have, like a map that we can actually see where the hill is gonna go, right?
Yes, coming up.
Goals, they're not set in stone.
Wow, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because that is exactly the truth. At the master plan level, you are setting some overall goals for the park district, and you are saying, this is where these amenities could go within the system of parks that you have. When you actually apply for funding and put your capital resources towards a park project, then, you know, we would recommend, and I think everyone would recommend, that you go through another public process to actually design the park. And so by saying this park gets this and that park gets that, these are recommendations based on the overall community need. But the plan will evolve as you start to make improvements to your parks.
Right.
So I just restated what you did, but you did it much better. But
Can I just add to that too? I'm sorry. Poor Bob, he's just trying to do a presentation here.
Hasn't started page 1 yet.
Just one more thing, in terms of identification of, when we get to the build design phase, or the design build phase, I should say, funding availability will dictate some of those priorities in and of itself. So that is, really the next phase of this,
Yeah.
is that planning process that goes into this. But I think for what you said, in my view, is accurate, which is just, this is sort of the master plan visioning part where, here's what the overall recommendations are, here are the guideposts, and now you have to find a way to reach those things.
Right.
excellent, thank you. So the process as we laid it out, those programs which the DNR funds. So during each of these 3 stages, we've had a lot of public engagement and input. And your community has provided, I think, a lot of energetic thinking, ideas, discernment over what ought to happen in your park system. And so we started at the beginning by having focused stakeholder meetings, open community meetings, attending Parks and Rec Commission meetings, coming to you folks to talk about kicking off the process. We met with each of the school districts within the community. And then as we explored different ideas, we came up with alternatives for each of the parks, and we brought those back out to the community in community-wide settings, like at the community center. We also met at the farmers market, which was a lot of fun. During that time, we put the ideas that we were considering onto an online survey that allowed community members to give us comments on which ideas they preferred and which ideas they thought didn't make as much sense. And so we got a lot of participation during that. We also did a statistically viable survey of your community, which was mailed out to people, and we got very strong response on that. And what that does, the intent of that is to get a cross-section of your community that matches the demographic of the community to talk about the parks. We love having people come to community meetings, but not everybody wants to come to a community meeting. So the benefit of having this survey reach out to everyone in the community as a cross-section is that you get a real true representation of where the community stands. And again, we got great feedback from that, and by and large, it was very, very positive about your community, very, very positive about park improvements and recreation and the programs that are held here. So as part of those meetings, we pared down the multiple sets of ideas into a single set of ideas, and we came back to you, I think, in October, and then perhaps again in November, and said, here's where the community is, here's where we're thinking the plan ought to be, and we issued a draft plan in November for a 30-day comment period. So the plan, a physical copy of the plan, was in several places around the community, and it was also available online. And we had 25 people give us responses to that draft plan, and what came through in those comments was a big support for trails and a non-motorized network, a big support for park amenities like bathrooms and lighting, which again we heard during the initial discussions. A lot of support for a new recreation center, and also a fairly pragmatic sense of let's fix up the parks we have, right? So I think everybody has their feet on the ground that way. By and large, the comments we got during the comment period were very supportive of the priorities that had come up out of the earlier discussions with the community. So they matched very well. We didn't see anything that was shifting away from what had been previously discussed. So where we are now is tonight having a public hearing, which is a requirement of the DNR that you have a formal public hearing to allow the public again to talk about your draft plan. And then ultimately, before the plan can be sent to the DNR, City Council has to adopt the plan. So we'll be asking you to consider that after the public hearing. So to give you a brief overview of the plan and the sections that are in the plan, it starts out with a review of your community, the demographics that are represented in the community, the recreation trends that are happening both locally but also nationally, and then looking at the level of service, like how are your parks meeting the needs of the community that you have. And so you'll see that whole first chapter is really kind of nuts and bolts stuff about what's happening in parks nationally and what that means to your community. The second chapter of the report deals with the administration of the parks. So it talks about the various commissions that influence parks, the staff departments of public works and recreation. It looks at your funding and annual budgets and funding sources that come from outside of Oak Park and the public and private support that you get. And it makes specific recommendations about your structure, if you will, of how you fund and administer parks. The third chapter deals with recreation and programming. That's the activities that are planned at the parks that are going on. So we looked at the assets you have within the parks to support programs, and we also looked at the programs that you run and how are they reaching the community. And I think we discussed this a little bit last time I was at council, but the general sense was that the Parks Department is doing an excellent job programming within the constraints that they have. In other words, they're being very efficient and effective at what they do in programming, but there are opportunities to expand that. The next chapter deals with specific park improvement ideas. And so I'll go through those, and I'll try to do it fairly briefly. I can get long-winded, so I'll try to be quick, but slow me down if you need to. So there were 6 parks that were selected as kind of priority parks to study. And these are parks that we went out to the community specifically to talk about. So we had meetings with neighborhood groups and focused invitation lists to meetings for a park that's within a given neighborhood. And so the first 2 parks that are on the sheet here include Tyler Park and Best Park. And Tyler Park, if you've been by there, you recognize that it needs, yes.
Where is the sledding hill on that map?
On this
Way
map,
back,
it's up
right.
top towards that brownish area.
Above the brown.
Yep, exactly where you.
So it's a little, long, skinny
Yep,
sledding hill.
yep.
And what are we planning to do about that?
Well, what's proposed for the sledding hill is to increase its height, and then also to use that grade change to build an activity-based play structure into the hillside. So we've done this in a couple of places where you use the hill as a part of the play feature. So you can elevate the kids up on decks, you can get kids who have mobility issues up there with ramps, and they can come down the slides and other things, but it kind of builds this sort of activity on the hill, because what you see is that most kids like nothing more than to run up and down hills.
Absolutely,
It's pretty simple.
absolutely.
Pretty simple equation. So that one we see as being probably one of the key parks to invest in play equipment.
And there's room in that little, like, it looks so skinny.
Yes, yes, because the bottom of the hill would essentially be the path.
Oh,
And then- and
right
so-
over that multi-age play built
Right.
into the hill
Yes.
stuff.
And so your runoff area, if you will, as you come down the hill, is out into that lawn space that's just south of it.
Right. And then, social space, can you explain, what's a social space? Is
Yes, that ends up being on each of the plans for each park. And the idea is that you're creating a place for people to meet. Now, you could simply say it's a picnic shelter. But what we're talking about is sort of a picnic shelter that also builds into it places that you can meet and sit down and be in the shade or be in the sun, have a restroom. And so there's spaces that could be used for family reunion, say, and rented for a family reunion, but they're all also places that we hope
There's a shelter for
neighbors just might say, you know, meet me down there and we'll have a cup of coffee.
I'm just wondering.
So the way you do that is you link it into the neighborhood with sidewalks so that everybody can get there no matter what their mobility abilities are. And you create an interesting place, whether
And
it's,
people can walk around the outside of
Yes.
the park.
and in each park, excellent point. Next time I'm gonna just have you guys give the presentation because you're leading into it so well. Each of the parks, and I don't mean that sarcastically, each of the parks has a walking path around it, which currently none of them do. I mean, the Shepherd Park, you know, has one, I suppose, so Shepherd Park does that. But the idea is that's one of the things.
People use it.
Yes, and they do.
And so- what is that big green thing under the hill and to the left of the shelter? The big green space?
That is an open lawn area that can be used for youth soccer
Oh, soccer.
or just open play. There's also been some talk in the long term about perhaps having more of a court there, you know, so that could be another option for that space. But we wanted to set aside some space that just wasn't programmed.
Could be used for something.
Madam Mayor, if I could just add to that too, if you see sort of, not midway, but quarter way down the first ball diamond there, there's a blue dotted line. That designates the school property to the south of that,
So we're sharing a
So we're
ball
sharing.
park with the school.
Right.
Yes.
Cooperating with the school.
Right, and we've met with them several times. Their desire is to have that turned into that, so that would be their primary baseball and softball
Right.
areas there, so
So they'd be thrilled.
absolutely. And not to get too in the weeds, but Tyler Park is a little bit unique in, with the exception of Shepherd Park maybe, in that because of the partnership we've been talking to the school district about, we may want to move that one up in the batting order, if you will, as a higher priority.
This is also a park we're recommending you consider using synthetic turf.
What's the advantage?
One of the advantages is that park has a lot of issues with drainage. And so if you go with natural turf, you still need to do something to improve the drainage, because every spring that park kind of sits unused because you can't even mow it because it's soaked. So, and artificial turf has a drainage system within it to keep the field usable. And what we're seeing is that even if you take the area that we just talked about, that lawn area, and just have a open artificial turf area for play, they're hugely successful, because the community, the kids want to play soccer on it. It draws people to it because you don't have to worry about it rained yesterday, and they're better for kids' joints and bodies when they take a tumble. So that's one of the one park we're recommending you
So
consider
then you
that.
have to replace it when it gets torn up, like,
Yeah, they do need maintenance. They have a lifespan of, depending on your initial investment, anywhere from 10 to 20 years. So Best Park next to that is a much-loved park, largely because it's so darn beautiful because of all the trees there. And the school kind of sits nicely in the background. And this site, like Tyler Park, is almost 50-50 shared with the school district. And the school district just invested a great deal of money in a beautiful play structure that's geared towards older children, so sort of mid-level, 10 to 14, if you will, or 8 to 12. So what we've proposed on this plan is, again, a track around it, a social space, and in this one, the circle that's in the upper corner is a play area that's geared towards younger children. So it
That's
would
the
round
young
out the
kids, yeah.
park's offerings. And
And
that
what's that
happens to
little
be an
blue
area that's fairly
right
open.
next to the circle, the little blue,
Yeah,
what's that?
that's a play structure, if you will.
And the brown under it?
That would be a safe play surface, which could be a synthetic, or it could be a chipped material that's meets a certain specification to protect from falls. This park also has an idea shown for an elevated walk that would take a person up into the trees a little bit. And that also becomes part of the play, because you can have then slides that come down off of it, and a
Those zip things?
zip run.
Can you have zip lines, I've seen them at birthday parties or something, without adults, supervising?
Yes. Yeah, we're actually installed one last summer in Toledo in a park on the river. And they're, so that you're not 30 feet in the air, you miss that thrill. But they're designed so that they don't need somebody to manage them and that they're safe. So you go from one platform, zip down, and then your inertia slows as you come up the other side of it.
Sounds great. Not about this particular best park, but it just, do we have anything for teens? It's sort of like we we want them to just kind of go away for 6 years.
Right, well, that's actually one of the advantages of doing something like that elevated walk, is because you can build into it challenge fitness activities that are geared more towards active teens. And then when you get into some of the other parks, we've got more courts that are available for court activities, pickleball, basketball, that sort of thing. And that leads us to Dewey Park. Again, some of the theme around Dewey Park is really a fitness-themed area. So you see a path around it, as we've shown on the other ones. You see some half-court basketball, some pickleball, and then a multi-age play space that's sort of exercise-oriented. And then just to the left of the courts, that brownish area, is a fitness challenge area that could be used by adults and older teens. And then along the path in the brown circles, those would be fitness stations. As we move over to Key Park on the right-hand side, it's a little harder to detect, but there is a path that circumnavigates the park on a renovated baseball field that increases the ball field length over what's there now, with the ability to overlay a full soccer field on the north side of that, if that were the activity that were programmed for that day. A social space, the long, thin brown bar is the social space, some pickleball courts, an added play structure that's geared more towards older children, since the one that's there is geared towards younger kids, and then some basketball courts next to the parking lot. A lot of these parks also were showing, if you look into the detail, little game court areas, whether it's foursquare or shuffleboard or some other, or just an area to just do sidewalk chalk or other court games.
Those blue and red and blue, those are little mini courts down at the bottom, those tricolor ones, the 4 of them.
Yeah, those are pickleball courts.
Okay.
And, you know, they could be tennis courts. There's room there if, at the time the park were designed, that you wanted to have 2 tennis courts and 2 pickleball, that could be done. Given current trends in use in parks, we're seeing a tremendous interest in pickleball from all ages, really. It initially, I think, appealed to an older demographic, and now we're seeing more younger people get into it because it can be very fast action, very, you know, intense play in a limited space. So Rothstein, we talked a little bit about earlier. In the middle of the park, the orangish brown area is a play space that sits between the 2 linkages up to the neighborhoods to the north. So that's really geared towards serving that neighborhood with some play area. The bluish areas are fitness court areas where it's, you know, there's an intense amount of fitness equipment within a fairly limited amount of space. And then in the northeast corner of that park, we're proposing a hillside that would have a boardwalk that worked its way up to the top of the hill, and then it could be used for sledding or just fitness-related activity. Lastly, when we get to Shepherd Park, the plan is really showing a fairly substantial upgrade to the park, including new picnic pavilions, new bathrooms, a
Carolyn, we're talking.
community
new
plaza
bathrooms.
space that could be used as a ice skating rink, a splash pad, an indoor
Yes.
recreation area, and a number of courts that are kind of tucked up next to and a little bit to the upper right of the recreation area. It includes upgrading the existing baseball field in the southeast corner of the park, and then reorienting the sledding hill a little bit, turning it clockwise a little bit, so we can have the hill kind of point to the southeast and have a longer run out. Because right now, if you got a lot of speed, you're heading into the fence.
I don't know, we had a little mini golf thing that was kind of run down and not used. And somebody said, well, look at this private company that did this fancy mini golf and it's very popular. How
Mhm.
does that work in public areas?
Well, it does take some management if you're to have it. I know there had been some public support for that idea, and our assumption is that when you're designing that central area, kind of north of the library, between the library and a new recreation center, that might be a use you consider, but it would be something that the community would have to really be behind. We did hear support for it, but it was fairly limited.
Not popular.
For Shepherd Park, is the indoor pool included on that, or is?
Yes.
Okay.
So the park, or the building you see, has kind of three elements to it. The midsection would be the entry area, social spaces, classrooms, exercise rooms. One of the wings would, and in this scenario, it would be the wing to the left would probably be gymnasiums with an indoor walking track. And then the one to the right would be a pool, indoor pool.
You can't
And then-
magnify that part, can you?
Oh, I can't from this.
So tiny.
Probably if I took it out of,
Where is the plaza space?
and the plaza space
Is
sits
that here?
just north of the library.
It's actually right in here.
So what's here?
No, is
This
the
is-
only way for the new
this
rec
is-
center to happen
that's
is
where
if
the
we do
amphitheater
tear
and
down the ice
everything
arena,
go.
or? I see that you got senior housing included there with the ice arena. If we
Right.
didn't do the senior housing, would we still need to get rid of the ice arena?
Well, the rec center, to answer your original question, the rec center is not dependent on the ice arena going away. So the two footprints of the buildings don't overlap. There is some advantage of having that space available when the rec center's built, because you can get all those courts kind of built right next to the rec center, which is nice.
Do you want me to weigh in a little bit on
Yeah,
some?
sure.
Okay, so I want to just speak to that. So one of the reasons that we were very supportive, obviously, throughout the process regarding the senior housing areas, not just for the ice arena area, but also for the current community center area. And one of the reasons for that was, the ice arena, if we don't demolish that, that's just going to be another building that we have to maintain and keep around. And from a funding perspective, and we'll get into this a lot more from this point forward, there is a way that we could possibly get brownfield tax increment financing in place, and through an RFP, obviously through public bidding, get a private developer to build that for us. That would be available to our residents. Now, who knows what the housing market's going to be like in a few years when we propose that, but that's a much better use, I think, in everyone's view, than what's currently there, for sure. Our residents are not using the ice
They're
arena
not
at all.
benefiting. Our residents aren't benefiting from that. People are coming from all around and skating there, you know, teams and all of that. But once a year, maybe, we can go and get some skating.
Not to mention too, if I could just add, the other thing to keep in mind is we have, and I've entered my 11th year, and the entire time that I've been here, and even a little bit before that, I believe, we have had full management of the ice arena in private hands. So we've let a management company run it, maintain it, pay for the operating cost of it, just so we could defray having to pay that cost, because there's no useful purpose for our community. It's a net loss across the board for us. And with the amount of building maintenance that's gonna be needed in that property, it's just not, it's not feasible.
I just see so many people there, now that I've been looking over there recently, I just see so many people over there at night. It looks like somebody's using it. So I was just wondering if there is a benefit at all to it, because even if people aren't Oak Park residents, if they're coming in and spending money at our businesses, then that's a benefit tangentially. So that's why I was wondering.
Well, and Councilmember, that's actually an excellent point. That is something, as we get farther into this and more into the funding of this, you know, it is possible, I should say, that as we look at, you know, maybe we replace the management company and take over operations of our own facility, and we lease it out to these leagues that this private management company is basically making profit off of at this point, solely because they're defraying the cost of having to maintain the building on our part. So there is a possibility that could happen, but we don't think so, but there is a possibility, so.
It's just packed. That's why I just was curious, because it is packed. Whatever's going on over there, it's a lot going on over there at night, like with the, I don't know if it's hockey camps or what, but that's what I'm guessing it is.
It's hockey
So,
leagues. The deferred maintenance cost alone, though, is gonna be enormous. So it would have to more than offset that to justify us keeping it and doing that.
And the chillers that are in, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, well, this is not about the ice arena, but it's about the area. In regards to the senior housing, will the placement of it affect how things are handled surrounding it? Meaning it's gonna be by the park, it's gonna be a lot of noise, there's gonna be our concerts and things in the park. So my question is, if this is a senior facility, how would our activities be impacted by them almost being right smack dab in the middle of it?
Well, I think it's an excellent point. I mean, I think there's a possibility that that could be the case. And that would be one of the reasons that we wouldn't move forward as we do our due diligence in this process.
One more question.
Yeah.
Have we had any indication that if we were to proceed with senior housing, if we would be able to go to full occupancy?
Go to full occupancy?
Yeah, if we were to do senior housing, I mean, I'm asking, do we have enough interest to go to full occupancy for it?
That's a great question, too. You know, I would just say off the top of my head, yes. However, I know the Corridor Improvement Authority is proposing a housing study citywide. And included in that study proposal are those parcels, which would have to be added into the district. But to say, hey, from a private sector market study of Oak Park and its housing needs and basis, would this support this? So that'll give us much firmer ground as we get some closer to that part of the process to determine whether or not it's feasible.
And one more thing. We have already looked at other venues for that area, correct? Other things in that area. For some reason, if the senior housing doesn't work out, we do have a contingency plan, something else to go there, right?
You want to take that one? I can answer that too if you want, but.
Well, in terms of
And I know
future
this is
use, if
proposed,
that
this
were
is
not,
like set in stone.
if that were not to happen, I think I would look at it as a land bank of sorts to be able to provide you some flexibility so that 10 years from now, a new use comes in or something, another feature you want to incorporate into the park and you have a place to put it. Right now, park is full. And I don't, just to comment, oops, a little bit on whenever a development could occur there, it would have to be supported by a market study that would demonstrate. So, you know, you wouldn't build anything on hoping that people would come. You'd have a very specific market study completed that would say, here's your target. Here's how many units we think the city could support. And I think, sounds like the corridor improvement district plan will do that.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think long ago, there were a lot of Oak Park kids that played hockey, and it was worth it for the city to own the ice arena because of so much interest. And that sort of waned. It's a very expensive hobby to buy the skates and the blades and the equipment and all that and the ice time. And so it just fell off. And by 2011, when I asked Roy Voltaggio, he said there's just nobody using it to justify having it there. And I took kids to Berkeley skating, and I never shopped in Berkeley for anything. I took them to the lesson and I took them home. So it's not, I don't see it, and I could be wrong, as a benefit to us. Like, what's in it for us? I'm not sure. I know what's in it for the guy that owns it. He's making a fortune.
Mayor, I hate to belabor this, but Bob, I was hoping you could actually answer this question, but I just want to clarify, with regards to the ice arena specifically, not only, and the mayor, you're absolutely right, that our residents just aren't using the facility, but not only that, but we looked at that facility as a possibility of maybe repurposing it as some sort of a community center or field house or whatever else. I was hoping you could speak to the results of that process too.
Yeah, we did look at that, looking at how the building is structured and the amount of light that gets in there and the cost it would take to renovate. The real value is really in the building, if you'd reuse it, is only those glulam beams that sit there. So, I mean, other than that, you're going to, the architects I've spoke to said you're going to spend more renovating it than you would to knock it down. And it wouldn't be well suited to the uses either, because, for instance, you could have the basketball courts in that area, but you couldn't have room for a running track around it. And that's typically in a community center, recreation center, those two things are tagged together. So you put the courts on the first floor, then you have a second floor running track around the courts, and the building wouldn't support that.
Not only that, but the running track, correct me if I'm wrong, was one of the top priorities of the
Yeah.
community.
People-
That rose to almost the very top when our community spoke
Yes.
about what the amenities they wanted.
Yeah, and largely because it appeals to all ages, right? It's something that everyone can participate in. The other thing that we heard when we toured the ice facility was that the chillers and the ice cooling system is not in great shape. So it's effectively past its lifespan, that you and the leasee are patching together with Band-Aids. So at some point, if it's going to remain an ice arena, it's going to have to be reinvested in. Okay, well, let's keep going. We got a few more things to show you. So some of the things that you might integrate into a renovated community center include space for performances, splash pads, new courts, interesting and innovative play, and the potential for outdoor ice skating. And we heard from several people, community members, who said, I don't care about the ice arena, but I would like an opportunity to do some ice skating. I don't need the arena to do that. So it was something that we showed in the plan as you having space for it.
Is this something they're putting down like squares of material to make the surface and you're?
You can do that, you can lease it, or you can do permanent installation, you can do it either way. You know, there may be some sense in the future to consider leasing it and seeing if there's community interest in it before investing in that.
And then wouldn't that be the same space as in the summer it would be splash pad and in the winter it would be ice?
You can do that. In fact, the one that's pictured there is at the Warren Community Center, and that in the summer is a splash pad.
So they're
so
double
you-
using that space.
Right. It's really more if you need the space, because there's not a lot of savings from our experience in trying to do two things. You spend twice as much, you get both. So if you're tight for space, it's a good idea. If you have space, it's actually easier to manage if they're separate.
And the Royal Oak has got a new ice skating thing. Does that mean we don't need one?
I think that would depend on community support and whether the community felt like this was something that they wanted within their own community.
Didn't Berkeley just tear down its ice arena? And what about Southfield?
Theirs is abandoned.
Yeah,
It's
I
gonna be
mean, I just,
repurposed. Yeah,
right,
yeah,
it's not in vogue.
right.
Do we have enough space
Yes.
for both? Okay.
Yeah. We just designed one that's being built in Toledo at the same park. They're a very intense investment. So it is one that you need to consider very carefully.
Right.
So on the indoor side, you know, having a recreation center that's got a very light-filled, open space to welcome people, has places for seniors to meet and hang out, places for classes, whether they're cooking classes or other instruction, and then places to exercise, whether it's pool, it's a gymnasium with the running
So the
track.
senior center is right there in the community center, not
Yes.
separate?
Yeah, and this particular one, that's in Plano, Texas, one that we designed and was built several years ago. So there are sort of senior-specific areas that are, where the seniors have preference for programming the use of. And it includes an all-ages workout center where the workout equipment is specifically geared towards seniors.
Thank you.
So we also took a look at several other parks in the system to give some ideas on opportunities to improve, including the Harding Tot Lot, showing upgraded play areas that are accessible to all. And then at Lessinger Park, we looked at how the
How
path.
do they make them more accessible? Do
Well.
they open that other side?
No, what I mean by that is that you have a sidewalk that someone who might be in a wheelchair or just might not be comfortable walking across rough ground can walk up to an area and have a seat. Or if you have a child that has mobility issues, you can wheel them up to the play area and then they can engage with it. So that's part of the one of the core missions of the DNR when they're funding things is universal accessibility. And then at Lessinger, we're showing, you know, connecting the greenway that sits there, how that can sweep down and connect to the new dog park with a new social space, picnic area, and then wrap around the school. And then you have a plan for the connector park off of 9 Mile that's been, you know, designed already and given some thought to, and I know that's a pretty that came up several times during the public engagement. People wanted to see those completed.
area, that southern area didn't get a lot of love, and that's kind of the center of what all we're doing with 9
Mhm.
Mile and the dog park and the connector park and all of that.
Mhm. We also took a look at, the plan includes recommendations on a new trail system through town, if you will, a non-motorized path for both recreational bikers who are just out for a spin on a Saturday, as well as those who might be using bicycles as a means of commuting to work. So there's a whole series of recommendations in the plan on that.
What are greenways for off-road connections?
Greenways are what we would call an area where you're essentially riding through a park. For instance, next to Lessinger Park, there's a city-owned parcel of land that's about 60 feet wide,
It's never been used.
never been used. So if we put a path in there, I would call that a greenway, because you're not sharing it with other traffic.
And what are the nodes that are destinations? What are, like why you'd get on the bike to go there, to get to something at the end?
Right. So we looked at creating a loop around town that would also have, connections to each park. And we also looked at what are the map is in the plan, but not here, but there's a plan where we identified different destination areas. If you were, for instance, going to pick up some groceries on your bike or something, or going to an area that had employment. So we want to connect to that. So there's the loop, which is largely more of a recreational thing. And then the plan is also showing corridors being improved, like Coolidge, 9 Mile, 10 Mile, so that we have a more connection across town. There also, we did look at where are the connecting paths in the adjacent communities so that you're linking up to a larger system. Because it won't be that outrageous to think that within 5 to 10 years, you'll be able to get on a bike at Shepherd Park and bike all the way down to the Detroit River.
Oh, neat.
Can I expand on that just for a second? I was just going to mention that because this is one of the areas that I don't think people, I think it's too new still. And I think, you look at, in fact, this spring, the Joe Louis Greenway, a good portion of it's going to be opening to the public. And it's really going to connect the west riverfront into the east riverfront, the DeQuinder Cut. And, for us, these greenways are sort of a natural, really forsaken area of our city that we haven't utilized. And this is really taking advantage of some of those areas. They're not all over the city, but they're in some pretty key portions of the city.
Yes.
But to have a greenway like that, i.e. the Joe Louis Greenway style, I mean, what a great thing that would be for our residents. You're not worried about biking with cars and other things like that, so.
It's interesting because it does appeal to all generations. I think that a lot of the younger people that are my kids' age in their late 20s are much more interested in riding their bike to work or to places than certainly I was. But it's also interesting, I was down at Milliken State Park a couple years ago, and I had a guest who'd never been to Detroit with me. We're standing at the bottom of the DeQuinder Cut. And he asked, how far is it to Eastern Market from here? And there were two seasoned bike travelers, let's say, who came by and they heard the conversation. They said 2.7 miles. So it just made me smile because it really does, it's for everybody.
And the amount of usage of the DeQuinder Cut alone
Right.
is hard to believe.
Yeah.
Thousands and thousands in the summer.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, we,
2 more slides.
yep,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I told you I was slow. The last chapter is an action plan, which gives out very specific steps and milestones to moving this ahead, including funding, programming, capital improvement, and all of those topics. And so it's kind of laid out in a table form, if you will, outlining what can be done, when should it be done, and which department that responsibility would fall within. And that is the draft plan.
Madam Mayor, I just want to say one thing.
That was massive, and appreciate your time and accessibility, and I'm sure if we have questions, we can always come to you.
Oh, yes. And I will just reiterate, before the public hearing, and some of these fine folks say how a misery it was to work with us, that we really loved working here.
Oh.
I really enjoyed working in this community, and it was a lot of fun, and I'm very excited about the results.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I just want to say one thing. Bob, we have worked with you, members of the Parks and Rec Commission, and it's been a real pleasure on our end too. What you guys have done is just great, and I think you really understand our community and what we can possibly do, and so, thank you.
Bravo. Okay, now I'd like to open the public hearing for the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. If anyone in the audience has questions or comments, we welcome you to come up and tell or ask.
Good evening, Ken Sherman on Jerome and Oak Park. Two things that I did not hear about, although it may be in there somewhere. One was, nothing was said about the impact of these changes on current parking in each of the parks and the hours of each of the parks. And then my third point is something that I brought up about a month ago that never went any further than bringing it up. Nobody had any comments, and it never came at a future city council meeting for discussion. Just like Oak Park took the forefront in the lead pipe issues, I think we should do the same with putting and installing charging stations for electrical vehicles at all these parks, because this is a plan that's not going to happen overnight, and by 2035, all cars are going to need to be electric vehicles. So I think we should really, when we're looking at the future, look at that. And as a member of the city's Recycling and Environmental Commission, I'm wearing that hat too, besides being a resident of the city of Oak Park. So it's just food for thought that I really think we should give it serious consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Always well thought out comments. Anyone else? This is the end of the public hearing. Next, I would like a resolution adopting the City of Oak Park Parks and Recreation Master Plan for 2023 to 2027.
So moved.
Thank
Second.
you. Thank you. Do we need a roll call, City Clerk? Yes. Mhm.
Councilmember Burns.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Edgar.
Yes.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes.
And Councilmember Whitehead.
Yes.
Motion carried, thank you. The next item, can you believe it? It's kind of momentous when you think about it.
Kinda.
It is like a sea change, because going to parks has always been like, well, they're a little rundown, they need a little love. And to have, state-of-the-art parks would be inspiring for all of us.
Madam Mayor, can I say one thing too?
Please.
This is the beginning of a long journey, but we've reached the end of the first phase of that long journey. But yeah, it's a very momentous occasion. Bob, thank you to you and your team, and to our staff, Lori, Crystal, many, many others, Rob, Dave. I'm leaving some out, and I don't mean to. Thank you so much, because a lot of blood, sweat, and tears have gone into the last year in preparation for this moment. So thank you all very, very much.
And then we need Director Rob Barrett to talk about the allocation of the Community Development Block Grant funds in the amount of $112,915.
Good
How
evening,
does
Mayor.
this compare in the last 10, 20 years? I mean, I think it had been very high at one time.
Interesting you asked such a question. I asked Benny to pull up a slide showing what the average amount of CDBG revenue has been, and you can see in 2015 we had a low of 110, and 2017 was our highest year, 164. So it's been bouncing around since I've been managing it and keeping track since 2004, but a lot of it has to do with the census tracking. And in 2017, they have spending performance ratios they have to perform, and other communities weren't spending the money as efficiently. And so they took it from them and we used it wisely in Oak Park.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
what was last year's funding for the CDBG funds? How much compared to this year?
So last year's funding was 128, and you really, these are numbers we're throwing out there because you do not know when you're filling out the application what the funding's going to be. So we project the funding out there based on some previous year's numbers in consultation with Oakland County, and then when they come in, we give them the recommendation for the allocations.
So this figure here, the 112,915, that's what you're predicting it will get?
That's what we're predicting. It more than likely will be more than that, but we'd like to aim low on the resolution.
Again, I wish we could move that 30,000 up a bit for yard services, because there's such a need.
Yes, I think I addressed that several times through the years. You know, I wish we could too, but the 30,000, we put out a contract for the seniors' yard services, and only one contractor bid on it, and they're serving around 80 residents, and they're having a hard time keeping up, especially when it rains or we have a snowstorm. They are max capacity at 30,000, and we have no other vendors bidding on this, so
We can't
it's
even,
a
if we have
difficult
the money.
way to spend the money,
Does it go out for, how often do you put this out for bid?
once a year. And the bidding is quite complicated because there's federal guidelines and payroll certifications that have to be made, and you need unique qualifications. It's just not a mom and pop snowplow agency coming to do your lawn.
Got it. A lot of hoops to jump through.
I just want to clarify that just because we've, excuse me, asked for 30,000 to be allocated through CDBG doesn't preclude us in the budget of our own budget to allocate more if that's one of the priorities you guys would like to focus on. So I just want to throw that out there.
Except if they're not really getting more than one bid
Right.
per year.
Right,
They can't service more even if we budget more.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
So further clarification, this resolution before you tonight is in preparation of the CDBG application that we're filling out. That'll be approved and submitted by Oakland County. And, you know, this is going to be money that's going to be available maybe in 2024. It's usually a couple years behind or a year and a half behind. It is recommended City Council conduct a public hearing to receive comment on the allocation of the 2023 CDBG funds. It is also recommended City Council pass a resolution approving the recommended allocation of funds and authorize the mayor to sign the application and sub-recipient agreement on behalf of the city. The proposed allocation is $82,000 for code enforcement, $30,000 for yard services, at a total estimate of $112,000.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you, yes.
So
Mayor
the,
Pro Tem Julie Edgar.
so the code enforcement, the 82,000, what percentage of code enforcement does that cover? What does that cover exactly?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your whole
82.
question.
The code enforcement
You
funds,
gotta turn your light on.
sorry, the code enforcement funds, what percentage of these funds actually cover code enforcement?
Probably around, let me do a quick calculation here. I'm guessing 15%. It almost covers one, you know, one of the four. maybe more like 20.
I would concur with that too, because it's about 110 all in for an employee on average, so that's about right.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions, you want to open the public hearing?
Yes, thank you. Public hearing is opened. If you have something to say about the Community Development Block Grant Funds and its allocation, now is the time to come and speak. Anyone interested? Okay. The public hearing is closed. I will accept a resolution approving the recommended allocations for the 2023 Community Development Block Grant Funds.
So moved?
Thank you. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Kind of we're stuck. Roll call, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Edgar.
Yes.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes,
Councilmember Whitehead.
Yes.
Councilmember Burns.
Yes.
motion carried. Accounting reports. 11A, approval for payment of invoices submitted by Garen Luco Miller, PC, for legal services in the total amount of $14,604.96.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes.
Councilmember Whitehead.
Yes.
Councilmember Burns.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Edgar.
Yes.
These are not as much fun without Solomon here saying you have to always pay your lawyer. B, approval for payment of an invoice submitted by Schiffman Fournier for legal services retainer for January 1st, 2023 to March 31st in the total amount of $18,000. We always pay this a quarter ahead.
So moved?
Second.
Second, discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Whitehead.
Yes.
Councilmember Burns.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Edgar.
Yes.
Mayor McClellan.
Yes, motion carried. Way down to item 15 on the agenda, City Manager Eric Tungate.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Before I get to 15A, I would like to take this opportunity to introduce our new Human Resources Director. Carla Allen is here. Carla, if you would come up to the podium, please. As many of you know, we just went through a really comprehensive process to identify our new director, and I am very proud to say, after a long process, we have hired our person. Carla is truly our person. She's been here for the last 6 years as our Human Resources Generalist. So congratulations. Carla has an MPA from Central Michigan University. She's also certified through the International Public Management Association in HR. And as many of you know, she's a board member for the Oak Park Youth Assistance Committee.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Carla.
Thank
Would you like to
City
say a few
Manager
words?
Tungate. Sure, just thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to working alongside of all of you. Such a great city, wonderful team of professionals, and I look forward to being part of the continued greatness. So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Carla.
Welcome to your new position.
Thank you.
Okay, and then 15A, I would like to ask, I guess am I asking Crystal or Crystal? Another veteran on the club. Hi, Crystal.
Hello, good evening. Tonight I have for you a few other additional appointments to the Oak Park Youth Assistance Board. Just as a reminder, the Oakland County Youth Assistance Program is administered through the Oakland County Circuit Court Family Division and consists of local youth assistance offices in Oakland County communities through a tri-sponsorship agreement between the Circuit Court, local municipalities, and then the local school district. The Oak Park Youth Assistance Program was created in 1983 by the Oakland County Circuit Court and includes the following sponsors: the City of Oak Park, the Oak Park School District, and the Charter Township of Royal Oak. Due to this makeup, membership eligibility requires acceptance from each of the local sponsors. That includes you guys. So at our last meeting, Oak Park Youth Assistance appointed Judith Saladar and Kimberly Hampton to the board, and we're now asking for your approval. Just a few things about each of these two wonderful volunteers. Judith is the co-chair of our Teen Center committee, Thanks to her hard work and dedication to this vision, we are opening an after-school teen center at the Oak Park High School in the second semester. Judith is energetic, bright, and committed to helping our Oak Park kids and families. She brings technology skills to us and has just agreed to create a web page, which we've needed for some time. Judith is a tremendous asset to us at Youth Assistance through her volunteer role. Not only does she attend and chair all of the Teen Center committee meetings, she also attends our regular board meetings and shares Teen Center updates with us. Kimberly started volunteering with Oak Park Youth Assistance at our annual pancake breakfast. She immediately expressed an interest in continuing to volunteer. Kimberly's kindness and willingness to share her gifts and talents with us is an asset. She has just taken on the role of corresponding secretary, sending thank you letters and acknowledgments to donors for the gift cards and monetary donations. And Kimberly attends our meetings and is interested in becoming more involved as a board of director member. Tonight, I'm requesting that City Council approve the appointment of Judith Saladar and Kimberly Hampton to the Oak Park Youth Assistance Board.
Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Welcome to the board.
Madam Mayor, members of council, just two quick things. One, we are monitoring the weather situation for later in the week. We're not preemptively calling a snow emergency, but wouldn't be surprised if that's what ultimately happens, so we're well aware of that. And then two, I wanted to say happy holidays to everybody in our community, members of city council, and then I lied, one more thing, go Lions. Have a good
Yeah.
evening.
Oh, my gosh. Can you imagine? We're actually optimistic about the Lions. Our friend bought his baby a Lions onesie, and he said, I'm setting him up for a lifetime of disappointment.
Or is he?
But now I'm beginning to wonder, yeah? Oh, don't want to hex it. Call to the audience. If you have anything you'd like to say about anything to do with Oak Park, please feel free to come up, give us your name, and we'd love to hear from you. Nope, it's a quiet group. Benny, if you can fire up those pictures. Aha. On the left, the mayor of Southfield, Ken Siver, and I'm in the middle, and the guy on the right is a Jewish news correspondent. The three of us were not Cholent experts, but we were appointed to be judges of the Iron Block Cholent contest that Young Israel supported, and they have the best time with this thing. Everybody cooks up a batch of this stuff, and everybody gets a little bit to to vote on which is the best. And it was a cross-cultural experience, very fun. The second thing is Jolynn Wilson was our secretary for the Corridor Improvement Authority meeting, which, as we spoke about earlier, okayed a study of senior housing in the city of Oak Park. We want to keep our people local when they age out of their home, and there is not enough senior housing, so we are studying the need and the market for that kind of thing. Shop local. Oh, the umbrella. The guy in the third slide is Ed Hirsch. And Ed Hirsch recently donated $1,000 annually to the Oak Park Youth Assistance. And Ed keeps in his huge warehouse how he started out. That is the kind of lawnmower he used when, in the edger he used when he started out in business cutting lawns. And from that, the sky's the limit. South Oakland County Mayor's Association held a meeting. Here I go again. And we had a speaker from the power company. Onward, your turn. Great.
Thank you to residents for coming out. Thanks for coming out. I know I'm really excited about our recreation asset study.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Okay. And I wanted to wish some of our residents happy Hanukkah, and everybody else, have a wonderful Christmas. Happy New Year to all. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I would like to give kudos to all that assisted with the recreation market presentation. It's very interesting, very detailed. Thank you for all your assistance, for the ones who volunteered, and Julie, because I know you were part of that too at some point.
We're just a member of the Parks
Just a
and Rec
member.
Commission.
You guys did a great job. Thank you very much. Be careful, it's cold outside, and we have impending snowstorm coming, so please dress and drive accordingly. Everyone have a good holiday, happy Christmas, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa. Thank you.
Just want to say happy holidays to everyone, happy Hanukkah, happy Christmas, happy New Year to everyone, since it's the last meeting of the year. It's been a pleasure working with our administration and our city officials. Just want to tell a quick story of what I'm grateful for this holiday. And it's for our neighbors here in Oak Park and our public safety department. And I'll say this disclaimer right here, because for one, I'm a lawyer by day, and also I'm your councilman. So let me say this disclaimer, but keep your dogs locked up. Me and Maggie, two of our dogs, or we have two dogs, they went running out of our fence after a bunny last week. So they were lost in the middle of the dark, like around 8 or 9 o'clock last night. We put some posts out on the Facebook forums, and we had so many loving neighbors, people coming out of their house in the middle of the dark with it being this cold, people checking their Ring doorbell cameras. We ended up finding both of them. The neighbor found the first dog, and then after about an hour, one of our neighbors here in Oak Park found a second dog at Captain Jay's, so I guess our dog wanted some chicken. So, but the public safety department, two of the officers were so wonderful when we picked them up from DPW. So it was just a chaotic, hectic night, but I know that if we were any other community, you know, it might not have been that type of happy ending to the story. Thanks to all the neighbors that we have in our public safety department that's always on top of it. So just want to say that Maggie and I are very grateful in our household for that. So thank you all, and happy holidays.
Nice.
Ooh, I wanted to say something now.
Yes.
And you know what, council member, I can totally relate, because I lost my Hershey poo-poo. But it was like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. I let him out at 11. I had just got home. It was the coldest and the worst day of the year, and he was pitch black. And it was dark outside. I called the police department every hour. They told me, stop calling, we'll call you if we hear something about him. My neighbors came out because they heard me. I had 2 neighbors on each side and 3 across the street. Now this is 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. They're out helping me find Hershey, looking for him. So I did find him. The next day, the police department called me, and they said, we think we found your dog, but he's at somebody's house, and you would need to go get him. If you want us to go get him, it'll be a fee. I'm like, I don't care, that's okay, I'll go get him. I went to get him, and I just wanted to say the DPW, not DPW, but the police department, the public safety, they dealt with this crazy mom dog for like almost 10 hours.
I was in my slippers on 9 miles, so just imagine that. So.
I get it, you do anything. And then they found my Hershey poo-poo. He was Oak Park Boulevard. He was across behind the schools and closer to Greenfield. And this lady, oh bless her heart, Hershey went up on her porch. She had 2 dogs. The dogs start going crazy until she opened the door and let Hershey in. I'm so glad that woman was a dog person, because most people would have came out of their house, shoot him off the porch, and, but no, she didn't. She called the police department, and they said, "Oh yeah, we know whose dog that is." She's been calling every hour, so yes, I concur. We have great neighbors, and our public safety department, they work really well with us for our animals. So I
Amen.
very much appreciate it.
Amen. Blessings of the season. It's a dark time of the year. It's dark in many ways. Every religion lights lights to bring light and joy and peace to the world. May it come. Thank you and good night.